Hi, I'm Rick.
Hi, I'm Oscar. Rick, we're going to talk about Azure DevOps?
Yes, because Azure DevOps is a moving platform, right? There's a lot of stuff happening. I would like to...
And not only changing of the name, right?
No, true. I would like to discuss what's new, have a look at the last couple of sprints that they delivered, but also talk about where it's going and the preview features that are available right now. So diving right in, I've got these different types of updates, and then in general, they can say that you can now use a published profile to deploy Azure Web Apps for Windows right from the deployment center. So that's just an addition that they did, and it's actually, well, it's cool, but it's nothing earth-shattering, right? Now, if we look at Azure Boards, there's quite a few things that they added, and one of the things is Microsoft Teams, of course, is a competitor for Slack, and apparently last week Google also announced that they will be making something that looks like a collaboration tool, and it looks a lot like Slack or Teams.
50th attempt on communications thing.
Yes, yes. Let's see what that brings them now. But for Azure Boards, for instance, they now have integration with Microsoft Teams. So you can have the Azure Boards app inside of Teams so that you can start collaborating on work items even better. You can also import work items from the CSV file and add parent fields to work item cards and to backlogs and queries. But if you look at the Azure Boards, this is one of the examples that they have for Azure Boards running in a Microsoft Teams channel. So that's actually pretty cool.
This is inside the channel?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's actually pretty cool. And it also says that Azure Boards is the one displaying or actually publishing the message. So it really shows what's working and who's working on what and where time is moving.
But is this like normal integration where what you also see on Slack? Is it mostly just a message of this happened, or is it more?
No, you can really interact with it. So you can reply, you can also create new work items. It's actually sort of Azure Boards Lite inside of Teams, so you can interact with the work items that are posted there, or create new ones, or edit them.
Oh, really interesting. Also to see some people of the team are not really in Git and in the board as we know it.
True.
But you have some communication with them, and I'm used to doing that either on Slack or something else. But it's not really integrated, so they're not part of your team in Azure DevOps.
Yeah, and now they are, and you can even pull in work items that already are in Teams. Hey, this work item, have you worked on it? Could you update it? And then it automatically syncs back into your Azure DevOps boards environment. So that's a nice thing. So then if you look at the importing work items from CSV on the queries board, you can do import work items. You select the file that you'd like to import, and then when you click import, it actually pulls in whatever's in the CSV. It tries to map it to the correct columns, and then your work items are there. So this enables you to have people who don't have access to Azure Boards at least prepare work for you, or prepare work items for you, and then you can just import them right there. Now on the repos part, also a lot of stuff has changed. So for instance, again, there's now an integrated app for Microsoft Teams, where you can also see stuff like changed files or pull requests that are actually created for the current repo. And I'm not really sure if you encounter this a lot, but sometimes you're halfway a pull request and you're reviewing files, and then you're almost done, but you think, hey, I really need to go home and I'll just check in later, or there's a meeting or whatever.
Yeah, there's a meeting normally. No, I saw this this week, and I really liked it. I really needed it before.
Yeah,
let's say that. Really cool.
We haven't explicitly said so now you can mark files as reviewed in a pull request. And then the cool thing is, it doesn't show to the person creating the pull request. No, it's only visible for the reviewer.
It's just for you, just a bookmark. I'm
yeah,
here.
It helps you. Okay, so you've seen this, you can go on. Also really cool is you can now have cross-repo branch policies, or at least administer them. So if you want a branch policy and you want to have them across different repos to be the same, you can now just do that once and have it be finished. And again, more integrations, this time with Slack and Teams, for creating bulk subscriptions in Azure Repos. So for the notifications of events that are happening on your repo, they have more information available. Now, this is an example of how you can have your repository being monitored from a Teams channel.
Yeah.
So again, this is in Teams, and here you can see that Kyle Roger pushed some code, and he created a pull request for the revamp of the network plugins. So you can actually start interacting right from here. So it makes it more easy to collaborate with your team members. Now, for pipelines, I'm not going to list all of them because I currently have 3 slides with updates on Azure pipelines, and they're working really, really hard on what's happening around pipelines.
It's also like really big part of what makes Azure DevOps great.
Yes.
Like everything's in there, and the stack is so big. You could deploy to so many different things, and you can build so many different languages.
Yes.
So I can imagine most of the work has to go into there because the board is, and yeah, it will end somehow because we're just moving cards. And Git is Git, and we can add some candy on it, but that's it. But this thing is, I think, the core of Azure DevOps.
Yes, and it's so powerful. And then the cool thing is that we used to have the XAML pipelines, and then now we have the YAML pipelines.
Yeah.
And then now, as a preview feature, we have the multi-stage YAML pipelines, where you can actually have building and deploying and testing our stuff all in one pipelines with all kinds of gates and checks.
And because we're going to the YAML version, like at some point that was the default. Like somewhere last year they started to present that as creating new builds. Like you have to now do YAML. Yeah,
now you have to scroll all the way down and then click the no, I would like to use the classic
it's really
editor.
hidden. So it's obvious that they want you to go to that path. But the first time I picked it up, I was really confused. Like we have the builds, which are now called pipelines, and we were going to that term already, but we still have the releases. It's like,
which was a pipeline, but then for releases?
Yeah, which was kind of the same, but I really liked it with the overview of the multiple stages. And so for a while I was a bit confused about where this is going. Like, is it the idea that we build everything in one YAML file? But now we have the multi-stage YAML pipelines. Yeah. So they actually fill up the gap, probably.
Yes, they do.
That also means that the current deployments, like you see them, will drop for the multi-stage, just one definition?
Yeah, in the end, I think so. And of course, it's all up to you because you could have stuff be published into a specific Artifactory. Artifact repository, sorry. Artifactory is actually a tool that allows you to do artifact management. But you could, of course, still have an intermediate layer somewhere where you just push the outcome of a build and then have that be the trigger for your release pipeline, which is now still under pipelines. What I'm seeing, at least for the projects I'm currently working on, is that it's all coming together and working from the one file.
Yeah.
Although, of course, it doesn't need to have to be one file. It's one pipeline, but you can include all kinds of stuff from external, so that's a good thing. One thing that stood out to me was support for PowerShell scripts and Azure CLI tasks. I think that's a good thing. And then, as I said, I wasn't joking. I really have 3 slides with updates on Azure pipelines. So there's a lot of stuff in here. But I think the most important one is the one on top right here. You can now use GitHub Actions to trigger a run in Azure pipelines.
Okay, that's
so,
cool.
Of course, GitHub has GitHub Actions that actually allow you to trigger stuff off of things that are happening in GitHub. Yeah. And one of the things you can do now is trigger a run in Azure pipelines as soon as you have a GitHub action triggering. So I think that's actually pretty cool. And this leads me to the discussion that I've had earlier. I mean, currently we have GitHub and we have Azure DevOps. And there's a lot of question about the fact, are they going to be kept alive, both of them?
Yeah, I think they will. And I'm assuming that the GitHub Actions is sharing some logic or some services underneath because it's kind of the same. But like GitHub had for open source projects, it had a place and it was free. But if you wanted to use it as an enterprise or anything, there you have a paid solution. Yeah. But the Azure DevOps is targeted at the enterprise non-open things. So will one of them be just open and the other one will not be open.
Yeah, although in Azure DevOps you can create public
You can
repositories
also,
which are free.
So yeah, why would you do one or the other?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think there's also, as far as I'm concerned, nothing beats the Azure boards in Azure DevOps as far as work item management goes.
It's really evolved from TFS and from all the
Yes.
work that was put in there.
Yeah, and I think although you can do projects in GitHub that actually allow you to have something of a board, it's never or at least currently, it's not even close to whatever's possible within Azure boards. So, but still, I mean, are they going to keep two implementations of Git around, or are they going to replace, for instance, Git in Azure DevOps by GitHub, or by the Git in GitHub?
Yeah, also don't confuse like GitHub with Git. Like Git is the repository system, and that's used everywhere. Like you don't need a central place for it.
Yeah,
It is just some project that does that and that gets updates. So like GitHub is a service around the actual repository. As for Azure DevOps, it's much more, and one of the parts is Git, for instance, which they host. But also they still support, what was it? TFS Service Control, what's it called right now?
TFVC, yeah.
TFVC now?
Or I think they can now call it TFSVC.
Okay.
I saw that in documentation somewhere.
It is also still there.
Yes.
And some people have so many history, and also history in the repository that will continue using that, or teams that are just used to it think it works fine for them, for their process.
I agree.
So they're different, but if you start fresh, like I wouldn't know in some cases what to choose right now. Somehow everything open source I want to present to the public, I will throw in GitHub, also for discoverability.
I do the same.
And for a project, for a client, which is kept indoors, I would take Azure DevOps.
Yeah, always. Yeah, well, same here. Well, as far as Azure Artifacts go, which we already touched on briefly earlier, you can now create project scoped feeds from the portal. Public feeds are now generally available with upstream support. That's a good thing. And the connect to feed experience has been updated. Probably they changed some colors and maybe some fonts, and that's the updated experience. Mostly is UI optimizations.
But the connect to feed thing can be sometimes tricky because you have different sources where you can connect from, directly from Visual Studio, or you want to do an authentication through CLI because you're doing it in VS Code or anything. And I do think that was always good, but I always have someone in the team who's like, I'm not authorized to get the packages. Yeah. So
I do have to say, by the way, I now always use NuGet.config, at least for specifying where I need to go, because if you have like 10 different customers that all have their own artifact feeds, you don't want to mess all of them, cram all of them into your Visual Studio.
Yeah. No, true.
So I have the NuGet.config file now, at least for the location of the feed, but then the integrated security, that's a whole different ballgame.
Yep.
Okay, so as far as wikis go, there's some really simple solutions, and for instance, this one, disable the synchronized scrolls. You can now have the source of your wiki page and the page itself be out of sync, at least as far as scrolling goes, if you would like to see what the impact is of changes you're making up front, somewhere on the top, on the lower part. Okay. And then this is actually such a cool feature, because we all use the sprint burndown, right?
Well, yeah.
But we finally get an overview that actually gave us some information. I mean, we can see how much of the total has been completed. We can see the average burn down. We can also see how many tasks are remaining. We can even see the total scope of the project. This is, at least as far as I'm concerned, although it's really small, I know, it's a big step up from where the burn down chart used to be.
There was a long time that I was just still printing things, putting it on the door and drawing them, because somehow the tooling didn't match our process.
So according to Microsoft, this is the sprint burn down widget with everything you've been asking for. So give it a spin and I'll make sure that it actually does have everything you're looking for.
Really good.
So the only thing I would like to show now in the end is if we go into the Azure DevOps environment, I mean, this is well known for a lot of people. Click on the little guy here on the top with the cog. Yeah. And then it has preview features. this is the location where you actually enable the new stuff that's in preview to be used. And then, for instance,
if you're like us, you will go in there and put everything to on, right?
Yes, you can
and
see.
then curse at
You
it.
can see. You can see here. But for instance, the multi-stage pipelines is currently still a preview feature.
Okay.
So yesterday I talked to a colleague of ours who wasn't able to get multi-stage pipelines working.
Yeah.
And then I showed him the toggle,
It's
and
there.
then he was happy.
Yeah, but you see that like they will appear there first. So if you never look in there,
Yes.
you won't see. And at one moment, they will push it a bit more forward. Like, do you want to try this?
Yeah, try
And
now.
I really like the way they release features to you.
Yes, I agree.
And we're a specific audience that always wants new stuff and also embrace if something breaks sometimes because we're all developers. But I think really they put a lot of effort in just onboarding you at the right spot.
Yeah, and I agree. That's actually what they do. They have it in there and they don't say anything.
Yeah.
And then after a while, they say, "Hey, there's this new
There's a
experience.
hint, and then it's
you could
default
try it
and
out."
you go back.
Yeah.
And it's really nice.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work thinking about how you need to build there.
Yeah.
Because at some point they have so many people out there with different setups. Because if you see how many toggles you have, all those combinations should work as well.
Yes, that's. Yeah, it's not all on or all off.
No.
But I think, or maybe I hope a little bit that Azure App Configuration has something to do with this, because that enables us to use feature toggles with the feature manager.
If you want to build something like this yourself, then
So I'm guessing that they have something to do with this, although I'm not really sure, of course. In the end, I love the fact that Azure DevOps is becoming more and more an enterprise-grade collaboration platform around source code and around work items and everything that's needed to get projects done. And I'm really curious into what the future will bring as far as Azure DevOps on one hand and then GitHub on the other will bring.
yeah, it's looking really good, really promising. I think it's a really mature platform.
Yeah.
Looking forward to new features.
It came a long way from
what was it?
TFS, and then before that, Visual Source Control and all the old stuff.
Yeah.
We've come a long way.
Visual Source Save, remember that?
Source Safe, yeah.
Oh my god. Well, really good.
Yeah, well, thanks. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
See you next time. Bye bye.
Bye.